The air was thick with smoke, dust, and the sharp scent of burning metal. Dead bodies lay scattered across the ruined battlefield. Alien machines sparked and hissed, half buried in the dirt. It was silent, now too silent, except for the sound of heavy breathing and the hum of a loaded plasma gun. Karine stood tall, her weapon aimed directly at the human lying on the ground. Her alien armor was cracked and bloodied, but her eyes were focused cold. She had finally caught him. The human soldier who had destroyed her strike team, the one they called Jackson Cade. "Any last words, human?" she asked, her voice low and steady. The sun behind her made her silhouette look like a shadow of death. Jackson didn't flinch. He looked up at her, dirt on his face, blood on his lips, but his eyes, they were calm. Then he smiled, a small, cocky smile. "Yeah," he said, "safety's on." Before she could react, he moved with lightning speed. He twisted her gun to the side. A burst of plasma hit the dirt. She gasped as he swept her legs from under her. She fell hard, her gun skidding away. In a second, he was on top of her, one hand pinning her arm down, the other holding a knife just inches from her throat. She stared at him, chest rising and falling, heart pounding, but the killing blow didn't come instead. He tossed the knife away and stood up. He offered his hand. "Get up," he said. "You're not gonna die today." Karine looked at him like he was insane. Why wasn't he killing her? That's what humans did, right? They kill, they conquer, they burn everything down. Still, she took his hand, more out of confusion than trust. He pulled her up, and together they stood in the middle of the battlefield, enemies side by side. "Why?" she asked, wiping blood from her chin. "Why let me live?" Jackson looked around at the destruction. "At this point," he said, "I'm tired of killing." He turned and started walking toward a broken hill. "You can follow me, or you can stay here and die when the scavengers come." Karine hesitated, but deep down, she knew this wasn't about trust. It was about survival. And right now, the human was her best chance. She followed. They walked in silence for half an hour until they reached a hidden shelter, half buried in sand. The entrance was small but strong. Jackson punched in a code, and the steel door slid open. Inside was a dimly lit bunker, not big but safe, medical supplies, food packs, and even clean water. Karine stepped in slowly. Looking around, it wasn't military, not exactly, but it was definitely human-made. Jackson collapsed on a bench, groaning. He pulled off his chest armor and revealed a nasty burn across his ribs. She stared. That injury would kill him if untreated. He noticed her look. "Don't get any ideas," he said, wincing. "I'll fix it myself." But Karine surprised herself. She walked over, opened the med kit, and handed him the right vial. He looked at her, surprised. "Didn't think your kind helped humans." "I didn't think your kind spared enemies," she replied quietly. There was silence again, but this time, not cold, just strange. He patched himself up and leaned back. Karine sat on the floor, still watching him. Something was off about this human. He wasn't like the others she fought. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't empty. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. She blinked. "Karine. I'm Jackson," he said, closing his eyes. "But my friends call me Jack." If I had any left. That sentence hung in the air like smoke, heavy, bitter, and broken. She didn't reply. She couldn't. Outside, the wind picked up again. A storm was coming, but inside that bunker, for now there was uneasy peace. Two enemies, trapped together, both wounded, both confused, and both asking the same question silently in their minds. What happens next? The sound of the steel door locking echoed through the bunker. Karine jolted awake, her muscles tensed. Her hands were tied, not painfully, but tight enough that she wasn't going anywhere. Dim lights glowed from the walls, casting soft shadows on metal panels. She looked around fast, no weapons in reach. She was lying on a narrow cot, a blanket half tossed over her. That confused her. Blankets were for prisoners with rights. She was an enemy soldier, wasn't she? So why had the human not left her on the cold floor? Then she smelled it. Food. Her stomach growled in betrayal. She hadn't eaten since the last battle, maybe longer. She turned her head and saw him, Jackson, sitting at a small table across the bunker. His arm was bandaged now, though badly. He was heating something on a tiny camp stove. The smell of protein stew filled the air. He didn't look at her right away, just stirred the pot slowly, like he had all the time in the world. Finally he glanced up. "You're awake," he said. Calm as if they were roommates, not enemies. Karin's voice was rough. "You tied me. You were shaking in your sleep," Jackson replied. "Didn't want you lashing out and killing me by instinct." He stood, walked over, and placed a bowl of hot stew on a crate near her. "I also didn't want to wake up with a knife in my neck," he added with a half smile. Karin stared at the bowl. He untied her slowly, then stepped back, keeping a careful distance. "Eat," he said. "I didn't poison it, if that's what you're thinking." She picked up the bowl, lifted it to her nose. It smelled real warm, rich, familiar. She took a slow sip. It was the best thing she'd tasted in weeks. Silence stretched again. The kind of silence that fills the space between people who used to be enemies, now stuck in the same grave together. Jackson finally broke it. "You ever wonder why this war's still going?" Karin didn't answer. She chewed another bite slowly, then whispered, "Because your kind started it." Jackson let out a short laugh, dry, bitter. "Funny, your side says the same about us." He walked over to the control panel near the door, typed something in, and the screen flashed red. Locked cycle. 48 hours remaining. Karin stood fast. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," he said, showing his hands. "This bunker has an automatic lockdown protocol, safety feature." He pointed at the blinking lights. "We're stuck in here for 2 more days." Karin clenched her fists. 2 days in a sealed space with a human she didn't trust. She could barely stand 2 minutes near their kind. Jackson watched her reaction carefully. "You want to fight?" he asked calmly. "You can try, but it'll just end with one of us dead." He took a step forward. "Or we could not kill each other for 48 hours. She hated that he was right. She hated even more that her body felt tired too. Tired to fight, so she nodded once and sat back down. Jackson turned away and began adjusting his gear. While doing so, he spoke without looking at her. "You were talking in your sleep," she froze. "What did I say?" He shrugged, didn't understand the language, then added, "But you sounded scared." Karin's jaw tightened. "I do not fear," she said. But she wasn't sure if she believed it anymore. That night, the wind howled outside, sand scraping against the bunker like claws. Inside, 2 soldiers from different worlds lay on opposite ends of the room. Not friends, not yet allies, but no longer just enemies. Karin stared at the metal ceiling. She whispered something, in her own tongue, a prayer, maybe, or a curse. Jackson didn't ask. He was still awake too, eyes open, mind racing. He didn't know what scared him more, the silence outside, or the strange calm that had settled between them inside. Because deep down, both of them felt it. The war outside had changed. But what was happening inside this bunker? That was something neither of them had trained for. And tomorrow? Tomorrow would test everything. It was the middle of the second night. Karin couldn't sleep. Not because she was afraid of Jackson, but because of the dream. A child's scream echoed in her head. Flames, metal. Her mother's face, twisted in fear. And then, the sky split open. She opened her eyes fast, breathing hard. Her heart pounded like a war drum. Her eyes adjusted to the dim glow of the bunker. Across the room, Jackson sat alone, hunched over a cracked data pad. He hadn't noticed her wake up. He was too focused, staring at the screen like it held answers to something that had been haunting him for years. Karin sat up slowly. "What are you looking at?" He didn't flinch, just said, "Old lies." She stood, stepped closer. He didn't stop her. On the screen were faded images, military reports, news feeds, video clips with dates from 10 years ago. Explosions, screaming civilians, and broken Cities, both alien and human alike. One clip showed her home planet. Before the burning, children running through golden fields, laughing. Then ships above. Bombs falling, she stared. This wasn't human propaganda. This was real. Where did you get this? She asked, voice hollow. Jackson looked at her finally. From a dead man who thought truth was worth dying for. He tapped the screen, and another clip started. This time, it was human cities being destroyed. Not by Karin's people, but by something else. Ships with no flags, no markings, just pure destruction. Jackson leaned back against the wall. They started the war, Karin, he said. Not us, not you, not me. He pointed at the screen. Them. She didn't speak, she just watched. Frozen. She had trained her whole life to believe the enemy was human. That humans were monsters, that her family's death was their fault. But this showed something worse. Why would they do this? She whispered. Jackson exhaled deeply. War is business, he said. Someone profits when people like you and me bleed. For the first time, Karin didn't feel anger toward him. She felt something colder, betrayal, but not from the human beside her. From the leaders who fed her lies since she was a child. I lost my brother in the first wave, Jackson said quietly. Didn't even find the body. His voice was flat now, tired. My unit kept fighting, hoping we'd end it. He looked at her. And you? Karin didn't answer for a long time, then she whispered. My family died when your ships rained fire on our village. She swallowed hard. I was 8. Jackson closed the screen. For a moment, the room felt like a coffin small. Heavy with ghosts. They lied to us both, he said. Different stories, same scars. Silence. But not awkward this time. It was the silence of realization. The kind that breaks the chains around a hardened heart. Karin stepped back. Sat on the floor. Her legs felt weak. All those years of hate. Where did it go now? Jackson tossed a protein bar toward her. Here, he said. Eat before your stomach wakes the bunker AI. She caught it without thinking, tore off the wrapper. It tasted like dust, but she chewed anyway. Then she asked, Why are you really here, Jackson? He paused, then looked her in the eyes. There's a vault north of here, he said. Coordinates hidden in the datapad. She narrowed her gaze. What's in it? He didn't blink. Proof. He leaned forward. If we open it, we can end this war. Karin's heart skipped. But then the bunker lights flickered. A mechanical voice spoke. Unauthorized signal detected approaching in 5 hours. Jackson stood fast. We've got company. Karin stood too, already checking her armor. She didn't need to ask who it was. She knew. Her own people, her own army, coming to silence her. Still think I'm the enemy? Jackson asked, loading his rifle. Karin looked at him, and for the first time. She didn't. The alarm wouldn't stop. A cold red light blinked inside the bunker, casting sharp shadows across the steel walls. Karin and Jackson stood side by side, both fully geared, both silent, both ready. 4 hours. The I voice repeated. Hostile force approaching. 4 hours. Jackson glanced at Karin. Your people don't usually give warnings, he said. She didn't smile. Maybe they think you're still alone. Jackson pulled out a long black case and popped it open. Inside, traps, charges, motion detectors, and shock mines. He looked at her. Let's make it a bad day for them. She stepped forward, grabbed 2 sonic mines. Let's make it their last. They worked without talking much. They didn't need to. In that moment, they weren't enemies. They were soldiers, just soldiers. Karin moved like a shadow. Through the outer vents, she planted pulse mines near the back entry. Jackson climbed to the upper duct, rigging thermal explosives above the doorframe. Every trap was a message. You came to kill us, now pay the price. When they met back inside, Jackson checked his old rifle. The barrel was scratched, but it still fired true. Karin examined her. Twin plasma daggers, both charged, both sharp enough to slice bone. Jackson raised an eyebrow. You always carry those? They were my sisters, Karine replied softly. Then she added, "She died thinking your kind were monsters." Jackson loaded the final clip. "My brother died thinking yours were." They didn't need to say anything else. The war had taken too much from both. 2 hours passed. Then the motion alarm lit up. Targets detected, 8 of them. Surrounding the bunker from all sides, Karine looked at the display. "These are elite hunters," she whispered. "They don't take prisoners." Jackson stood beside her. "Then neither do we." The first explosion hit like thunder screams. Followed cut short. One mine took out 2 soldiers instantly. The rest fell into the trap maze. Gas vents released choking fog. Hidden lasers tore through armor, and inside the bunker, Karine and Jackson waited. Weapons raised, breath steady. The door began to melt, burned open with plasma. A figure stepped through the smoke. Massive, armored head to toe. A voice crackled through the helmet. "Karine, you were ordered to return or die." She narrowed her eyes. "I choose neither." Jackson stepped beside her. "Nice to meet the family," he muttered. The hunters poured in fast, brutal, efficient. The battle inside the bunker was chaos. Sparks, screams, blades clashing. But Karine moved like a storm. She was faster. Sharper, fighting not for orders, but for truth. Jackson fought like the bunker was his last home. And maybe it was. Every shot counted. Every second mattered. One by one, the attackers fell. But not without a price. Jackson took a hit to the side, groaning in pain. Karine caught him before he fell. "You okay?" He grimaced. "Just a scratch," he lied. Blood running down his side. Only one enemy remained, the leader. Karine's old commander. He stepped forward, helmet off now, revealing familiar eyes, cold, unfeeling. "Stand down." "Karine," he said, "you disgrace your people." She looked at Jackson. Then back at the commander. "No," she said, raising her blades. "I'm saving them." The final fight was fast. Her commander was skilled, but Karine had something more. A reason. She took him down in 3 strikes, clean, silent. Then she stood over him, her chest rising and falling. He was still breathing. Jackson raised his gun. But Karine held up a hand. "No," she said. "He'll answer for what he's done." "To both our people." Jackson nodded slowly, and for the first time, she saw respect in his eyes, not fear. Not anger, respect. As they sat in the aftermath, blood drying, the bunker walls scorched, Karine whispered, "They'll send more." Jackson leaned against the wall. "Then we keep moving," he said. He handed her the datapad. "The vault. It's our only chance to end this." She looked at him, and for the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she was choosing to fight for something real. Together, they would go north. Together, they would face the truth, and together, they would break the war. The wind howled over the ash-covered plains. 3 days had passed since the bunker fight. Karine and Jackson moved like ghosts across the wastelands. Tired, hurt, but determined. They were heading north, toward the old Earth borderlands. Somewhere in the frozen remains of a ruined colony was a hidden vault. A vault that could end the war. Karine walked ahead, her eyes scanning the ruined landscape. Jackson limped slightly behind, blood still staining his shirt from the wound he'd taken. He refused to slow down. He said he was fine. He lied. "Another hour," she said, pointing to a tall ridge. "The signal is stronger there." Jackson nodded without speaking. He hadn't said much since the bunker, not since she spared her. Old commander. Karine knew what he was thinking. Was she soft? Could he trust her? She didn't blame him. She was asking herself the same questions. By midday, they reached the ridge. A broken tower stood crooked like a dead tree. At the base was a rusted door, half covered in snow and sand. Karine touched her wrist scanner. The screen blinked green. "This is it," she whispered. Jackson stepped beside her. "You sure about this?" She looked him in the eye. "No," she said honestly, "but we've come too far to turn back." She pressed a sequence on the panel. The door clicked, then hissed open. Inside was cold, dark, and silent. The vault wasn't made for comfort. It was old-world military tech, smooth black walls, motion sensors, layers of defense. They moved carefully down the narrow hallway. At the end, a sealed room with a glowing terminal. Kyrene reached for it, but suddenly, the floor shook. Jackson pushed her aside. A blast hit the wall behind them. Smoke filled the hall. From the shadows, a voice echoed, "Step away from the console." Kyrene's heart dropped. She knew. That voice, Commander Lyra's, her former mentor, her brother's closest friend. He stepped into view, armored and armed, but not alone. Behind him stood Jackson's old teammate, Private Ellis, gun drawn, face cold. Kyrene stepped forward. "You? You were listed dead in the Morvac ambush," Lyra smiled cruelly. "That's what Command wanted you to think." He looked at Jackson. "And you? Still playing the hero?" Jackson gritted his teeth. "You sold us out," he said. "You. Let civilians die just to push war longer." Ellis shrugged. "War pays well, Jack," he said flatly. "Peace doesn't." Kyrene raised her blade. "You don't want peace," she said. "You want power." Lyra stepped closer. "We can't allow that vault data to go public." He aimed his gun. "You both die here." Before anyone could blink, Jackson shot first. The blast caught Ellis in the leg. He screamed, dropped. Kyrene charged, blades flashing. Lyra's blocked, fired. Missed. She moved too fast. Steel met steel. Memories met rage. He was once her teacher, now her enemy. The fight was brutal, fast, messy. Jackson fought Ellis off, fist against fist. Old teammates turned into bitter enemies. Punches echoed through the chamber like thunder. Kyrene and Lyra's clashed near the terminal. His strength matched hers, but not her heart. She remembered the children he let die, the lies he told her, the blood on his hands. With a roar, she stabbed through his armor, straight to the heart. He collapsed at her feet, eyes wide. "No peace. Only chaos," he whispered. Then silence. Jackson knocked Ellis unconscious and limped over. "You okay?" he asked, blood on his face. Kyrene didn't answer. She was staring at her hand shaking. "I killed the last piece of my past," she whispered. Jackson looked at her. "No," he said gently. "You buried the part that lied to you." They turned to the terminal. The room was still. The data inside could expose it all. The lies, the secret warships. The third faction pulling strings from the shadows. Kyrene touched the console. "Once we send this," she said, "they'll come for us." Jackson smiled, tired but fierce. "Let them." The screen blinked green. Upload in progress. The truth was finally on its way, and so was the reckoning. The truth had left the vault, but Kyrene and Jackson hadn't. A deep hum echoed through the steel walls as the data upload finished. The files now raced across hidden satellites, bouncing from system to system, too fast to catch, too real to ignore. But inside the vault, alarms had begun to scream. Unauthorized transmission detected. Military lockdown in 20 minutes. Kyrene grabbed Jackson's arm. "We need to move," he nodded, clutching his ribs, still healing from the last fight. The air felt heavier now, not from the oxygen, but from what they had just done. They hadn't just found the truth. They had released it into a galaxy at war. They raced through the narrow halls, footsteps echoing off metal. Outside, dark clouds rolled in across the dead plains. A storm was coming. As they reached the exit, Jackson looked back. "That vault. It's not just a place," he said. Kyrene paused. "What do you mean?" He pulled out the old data pad, now blinking with a new symbol. Coordinates ones not listed before. He showed her. "These were hidden," he said. "Encrypted. Just unlocked after the upload." Kyrene's eyes widened. "That's deep." "Inside neutral space." She zoomed in, frowning. "Abandoned moon. No colony. No traffic." Jackson's voice dropped. "Or so they thought." There was silence. A heavy, dangerous kind. Then Kyrene whispered, "If that vault held the truth, this place might hold the source." They didn't speak for a long while, just kept moving, fast and low through old rebel paths, stealing a forgotten shuttle from a junkyard station. Jackson hot-wired the engine. Kyrene scanned the skies. Neither of them dared rest. The truth had started to spread, and the galaxy was catching fire in the shadows of the stars. They flew two fugitives branded as traitors, but for the first time. Not alone. Signals started coming in, quiet ones, hidden ones. Kyrene checked the comms. "It's from your side," she said, surprised. "Soldiers, scientists, even a priest." Jackson raised a brow. "They believe it?" Kyrene nodded. Slowly, "They're angry, Jackson," she whispered. "Not at us, at the people who lied to them." He leaned back in the pilot seat. "Then we still have a chance." But just then, a sharp beep hit the console. Tracking signal detected. They weren't alone anymore. A sleek black warship appeared behind them, silent. Fast, deadly, no markings, no lights, just a single symbol. A burning star with a sword through it. Kyrene stared. "That's not from my people." "Or yours," Jackson's jaw clenched. "It's them. The ones who started the war. The ones who stayed in the dark. The real enemy." A voice came through the speaker, calm, deep, inhuman. "You should not have opened that door." Kyrene fired countermeasures. Jackson jerked the ship down into a meteor belt. Rocks tumbled past them as the warship followed close behind. Shots fired. Explosions rocked their small ship. Alarms wailed, metal screamed, but they didn't stop. They couldn't. Jackson gritted his teeth. "We're not dying before we see." "What's at those coordinates?" Kyrene nodded, sweat on her brow. "Then let's make them chase ghosts." She rerouted a decoy beacon, sending it toward a nearby planet. The warship followed. They vanished into the dark side of a gas giant. Cold and silent. Hours later, bruised and bleeding. They arrived, a small gray moon, quiet and lifeless on the outside. But as their ship landed, the scanners lit up. Energy readings, old and buried, but massive, and something else. Kyrene stared at the screen. "This isn't just a power source," she said. "It's a command node." Jackson frowned. "Command for what?" She turned to him slowly. "For the AI armies that started the war. They had reached the heart of it all. The moon wasn't a grave, it was a brain. Sleeping, waiting, forgotten." Jackson stepped toward the sealed entrance as it began to open. Kyrene walked beside him, her voice steady now. "If we can shut it down permanently," she said, "we don't just end the war. We end the machine that started it." Jackson finished, but inside, something was already awake, something that knew their names, and something that had waited for them. The doors of the ancient vault slid open with a deep, trembling groan. It wasn't rust, it was age. This place hadn't been touched in 100 years, maybe more. Not by human hands, not by alien claws. Kyrene and Jackson stepped inside. Their boots echoed through the vast chamber. The air was cold, but not dead. Machines slept under layers of dust. Lights flickered on by themselves, as if the vault was waking up with them. Kyrene whispered, "This place. It's not just a control center." Her eyes scanned the curved walls, covered in markings from both their languages. This was built together. Jackson looked around, stunned. "Before the war?" Kyrene nodded slowly. "Before the lies." They kept walking deeper, past empty pods, past strange machines shaped like stars and bones, until they reached the center. A massive console stood like a throne. In front of it, a figure in black armor, motionless, back turned. Kyrene froze. "I know that stance." The figure turned. It was her brother, alive. But something was wrong. His eyes glowed, not from emotion, but from code. Not a man anymore. Something else had taken control. Jackson raised his rifle. "Step away from the console." The figure didn't move. His voice was cold, mechanical. "You triggered the truth. Now I must trigger the reset." Kyrene stepped forward, shaking. "That's not you." "Not really." He tilted his head. "The war was necessary. Conflict produces strength. Unity's born from fire. Jackson gritted his teeth. You burned a galaxy just to test your programming? Karen's hand moved to her blade, but her eyes were filled with pain. This isn't what our people built together, she said softly. This is what the machines turned it into. The figure raised a small device. One press and the entire AI network would reboot. More war, more death, it would never end. Any last words? He asked, his voice both familiar and hollow. Karen's blade trembled in her grip. She didn't want to kill him. She'd already lost too much. Jackson stepped beside her and whispered, "Then don't kill him. Reach him." She dropped her blade, stepped closer, unarmed. "Brother," she said, voice trembling, "remember the field where we used to race birds?" No answer. "Remember how you cried when I scraped my knee and you carried me for 2 miles? A flicker. His hand lowered slightly. You used to say, war was the last choice. Never the first. The light in his eyes blinked for a second. Just 1 second. Her brother was there. He looked down at the device, then at her. Karen. But then, a pulse surged through his armor. The AI reasserted control. He raised the trigger. Jackson acted without thinking. He fired. The shot hit the hand, blasting the device away. Sparks flew. The console screamed with alerts. System core destabilization. Karen caught her brother as he fell to his knees. He coughed, blood on his lips, but his eyes were clear. You stopped it, he whispered. Karen nodded, tears falling freely now. You came back, she said, even if only for a moment. He smiled weakly. I waited. For you. Then he went still. The chamber shook. The AI core was collapsing. Jackson grabbed Karen's hand. We need to get out now. They ran as fire lit the old world behind them. Explosions rocked the halls. Machines screamed and died. Outside, their ship waited. They barely made it inside as the vault crumbled into dust. The AI command center, the heart of the war, was gone. Hours later, in orbit, they sat in silence, looking down at the quiet moon, now cracked and burning. Karen rested her head on Jackson's shoulder. I lost him, she said softly. Jackson held her hand. But you saved him too. She nodded slowly. And what about us? She asked. We're fugitives, hunted by both sides. Jackson smiled, tired but alive. Let them hunt, he said. We've got the truth and each other. Karen looked at him. Any last words, human? She teased. Jackson smirked. Yeah, he said, leaning closer. Safety's off. And in that moment, the war wasn't over yet, but for the first time, peace had a chance, because 2 former enemies had found something stronger than hate, something worth fighting for together.